Welcome to Tokyo Wave, recorded in a live studio in Harajuku, Japan, with your hosts Aaron and Parker. Alright everyone, welcome to episode 103 of Tokyo Wave. We're your hosts Aaron Randall
and Parker Allen. On Tokyo Wave, we bring you weekly updates from our studio in Harajuku.
Join us in segments featuring this week's top news,
political happenings,
business,
and other random garbage.
To get us started, here are this week's top news highlights.
Bank of Japan maintains ultra-low rate policy, diverging further from its peers.
80% of COVID subsidy applications going unverified as fraud cases surge in Japan.
Japanese man arrested over Putin straw doll nailed to shrine tree.
This week in Japan. Alright, so our first story. The Bank of Japan maintains ultra-low rate policy, diverging further from peers.
Kyodo News has reported that the Bank of Japan on June 17th maintained its ultra-easy-squeezy monetary policy in defiance of growing market pressure to tweak it. Seemingly unfazed by the prospect of further yen weakening as it lags far behind major peers forging ahead with rate hikes to fight inflation.
In a widely expected move, the central bank decided at a two-day policy meeting to set short-term interest rates at minus 0.1% and guide 10-year Japanese government bond yields around 0%. The yen plunged well below 134 against the US dollar immediately after the decision, though the Japanese currency rebounded quickly and trading became volatile.
God, I'm glad I'm not a forex trader. So the Bank of Japan seems to be in a bit of a bind. It needs to justify its need to retain this ultra-low rate policy based on the view that a recent bout of inflation will not be sustainable while the yen depreciates rapidly, a byproduct, of course, of the bank's dovish stance. While import costs are rising for resource-scarce Japan, which could hurt households.
Leading up to the decision, the Bank of Japan's resolve to cap a rise in the benchmark 10-year yield above 0.25% had been increasingly tested by investors, expecting the central bank to tweak its monetary policy.
However, the bank reaffirmed on July 17th its commitment to unlimited purchases of 10-year bonds at a fixed rate of 0.25% every business day in principle.
The Bank of Japan stuck to its view that the economy has picked up as a trend, although some weaknesses have been seen in part, mainly due to the impact of COVID-19 and a rise in commodity prices.
With the yen in a falling trend, the central bank said, quote, "It is necessary to pay due attention to developments in financial and foreign exchange markets and their impact on Japan's economic activity and prices."
Major central banks are scrambling to tame soaring inflation. The US Federal Reserve went ahead with a 0.75% point rate hike on June 15th, the largest since 1994. And the central banks in Britain and Switzerland also followed suit by raising rates. The European Central Bank is planning to hike rates in July.
So basically, all the other major world economies are printing money like it's nobody's business, but the Bank of Japan is saying, nah, we're good.
It's a tricky situation. Obviously, anyone who holds yen is probably pretty pissed at Kuroda and the Bank of Japan for not kind of doing what people were not expecting and raising the rates. But
although I will say to anybody planning to nail an effigy of Kuroda to a shrine tree, that's not a good idea, as we're about to discuss. So the Bank of Japan said it would not hesitate to take additional easing steps if needed, adding that policy interest rates will remain at their present or lower levels.
Mari Iwashita, chief market economist at Daiwa Securities, said, The Bank of Japan does not want to rock the boat now, especially before the House of Councilors election, noting that June 17th's decision was within expectations, which is very true. People were expecting this.
And we talked about it last week, and it's like the Bank of Japan is like, this is what we're going to do. And all the economists are like, well, what happens if they don't do it?
Yeah.
Usually when the Bank of Japan says they're going to do something, they tend to, do it.
Yeah, the only thing I think was going on is Switzerland actually finally raised as of yesterday. So I think people are kind of expecting banks to do stuff that's not traditional right now. But people forget that Japan sticks to their guns. They don't change things that often.
Yeah, and I mean, it's unfortunate for people who have a lot of yen, like most of us living here in Japan.
Yeah.
But as long as we don't leave the country, we're okay.
Right. And if
it's like foreigners can come to Japan now and like pretend like they're like nouveau riche while we have to stay in Japan or risk going overseas and be like 30% broker than usual.
Yeah.
Does not sound like fun.
For sure.
0 out of 10 would not recommend. So the yen has met intense selling pressure as financial markets expect the gap in interest rates between Japan and its overseas peers to widen due to this policy lack of decision.
The rapid fall of the yen, which recently plunged below 135 the US dollar, prompted Governor Haruhiko Kuroda to highlight its negative impact on the economy, whose recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic remains fragile.
So basically, Kuroda is saying, we get it, you're hurting, but we don't care, at least not yet.
Yeah, they probably want to make some good money with the big export conglomerates while they can.
I'm not even sure if that's true, though, because you think about all of the big global companies and they import so much. I mean, think about fast retailing, Uniqlo. When's the last time you saw something in Uniqlo that was made in Japan?
Good point. I mean,
I don't even think there's anything in that store made in Japan. Everything is made somewhere else.
Yeah.
So cheaper yen means a higher cost of making stuff. And even Japanese cars, a lot of the components, a lot of the chips are not made in Japan. And they're trying to fix that, obviously, but that is not the current situation. They're made in Taiwan or China or somewhere else, not Japan. So
yeah, I think Japan also has a bad habit of not taking action until it's too late. I think we might see it go the USD to JPY as high as 150.
150? You think so?
I think it's possible, yeah.
Whoa, that would be trippy.
Another thing that a lot of people aren't talking about, Japan is the largest holder of US Treasury bonds. They have 300 billion more than China. So there's a lot of things the government of Japan can do, like in an hour, that could change the price of yen, right? Not just by changing the interest rates. They could buy, sell bonds, etc. There's so many different things they could do to tweak it. It's kind of dubious what the underlying motive is. I mean, obviously...
So does that mean you think there's a conspiracy theory?
I mean, to help out big businesses that have large export schematics like Toyota, Nissan. But as you said, a lot of the parts aren't manufactured in Japan, but, look at how many Toyotas we can sell during this period. I don't know.
Coming soon to Tokyo Wave listeners, tinfoil hats. On sale, coming soon.
All right, and up next, 80% of COVID subsidy applications going unverified as fraud cases surge in Japan.
The Mainichi has reported that numerous fraud cases have surfaced in Japan exploiting the national government's COVID-19 subsidy program to support hard-hit businesses.
Recently, a family of 4 was arrested for swindling about 960 million yen, that's about 7.1 million US dollars, while a Tokyo Regional Taxation Bureau employee and others fraudulently received payments totaling of 200 million yen, or about 1.5 million US dollars.
The coronavirus subsidy program distributes up to 2 million yen, which is about 15,000 US dollars at the current crappy exchange rate, to mid and small sized companies whose earnings have dropped by over half due to the pandemic. There is no need to return the payments, and there are no limitations regarding how they should be spent. So if you use the COVID subsidy to buy that Rolex you always wanted, totally fine.
Once applications began to be accepted on May 1st, 2020, shortly after a nationwide COVID-19 state of emergency was issued in Japan, the designated website was flooded with applications, and it became temporarily difficult to access. By the deadline of February 2021, about 4.24 million applications had been made, and a total of 5.5 trillion yen, that's about 41 billion US dollars, has been distributed.
That's a lot of cash.
Yes, it is.
So shortly after the applications began to be accepted, fraud cases were reported across Japan. According to the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, a majority of fraud cases involved applications using tax return forms that reported false occupations, income, and other fraudulent information. There have also been several cases where applicants swindled over 100 million yen in coronavirus benefits.
So I was going to say at the beginning, like, how is, a single individual getting that much? So they just have tons of fraudulent companies or fake companies set up?
So actually, the way that these fraudsters were making money is by cajoling others to basically do it and getting a cut.
Oh, we talked about there was some high school or college student that got like 10 people to do it.
And so basically you just get a bunch of, it's like a pyramid scheme. You
Right,
get a bunch
right,
of people to apply for it, they get the subsidy, and then you get the cut, and like you just kind of rinse and repeat.
What's funny is people that don't know, MLMs and pyramid schemes are really big in Japan. So I could totally see that, like, some guy's like, hey, I can get you Jumon, right? But he's taking the hey, I could get you 100,000 yen, but then he's taking the other 900,000, right?
Exactly. And so you just keep on doing that over and over again, and before you know it, boom, Lamborghini for you.
And you've gotten everyone at the university 100,000 yen.
Everybody loves you.
Everybody loves you.
Especially the public prosecutor's office. They love you so much, they've got cameras watching you 24/7.
You did this with 400 people?
So a common method among these fraudsters was to submit fake tax return forms by lying that they forgot to submit the previous year's document. There have been repeated cases of false applications using different names, leading to a rise in financial loss from the fraud.
The Japanese government has demanded that businesses which were recognized as having received the benefits illicitly return the payments, and stated that in cases where they do not comply, it will disclose the applicant's name and address, and file criminal charges in some cases. Meanwhile, if payments are voluntarily reported and returned, the government plans to exempt the parties from criminal charges. As of May 26, 15,427 fraud cases had been reported, and a total of 16.6 billion yen, or about 120 million USD, had been returned. Wait, 15,427?
That's a lot of fraud.
Yeah, and they all reported it on their own volition.
Well, they might have been told by a little birdie that they were about to get slammed with charges.
Yeah, get the book thrown at them, but that's a lot. Wow.
Yeah, well, they just made it so easy to do, and you can do it all online. So I feel like fraudsters saw this as a huge opportunity to make a quick buck on the Japanese government.
Right. And I can't disclose what company, but a very large company in Japan was contracted to actually review all these applications. And the people reviewing it are not government agents. They're just contracted out by the government.
Yes, it's like a bunch of people who have never seen a tax form looking at tax forms.
Exactly.
Oh, that looks like a tax form. Click.
Yeah.
Here's your 20 grand. Congratulations.
This is actually really, it's surprising, not surprising for Japan, because we know that everything you do in Japan, you have to fill out, 50 pages worth of paperwork. I mean, getting a good visa in this country is about 50 pages of like heavy legal documents and working with a lawyer for like 2 to 3 months.
And so I think with these COVID relief applications, they wanted to make the process easy and simple so that people who needed the money could get it quickly. And it worked, but of course it had the side effect that people who just wanted to get the money and didn't need it could also get it too.
It's just black and white here. It's like they either do it all the way, like when you're applying for a visa, where it's like you have to provide just so much, or it's just like provide these 5 things and we'll give you your relief money.
Boom.
Yeah.
Well, I think COVID fraud was also a big thing in the United States as well. So it's definitely not a Japan-specific problem, but hopefully these fraudsters will eventually get caught and be brought to justice. And of course, people who need aid will continue to be able to get it.
Or they'll just have their name and address publicly put out there.
So that's another thing that the Japanese government has been doing. They have been naming and shaming companies that were found to be willfully defrauding the government out of these subsidies. And up next, Japanese man arrested over Putin straw doll nailed to a tree at a shrine.
On June 15th for allegedly nailing a straw doll bearing the face of Russian President Vladimir Putin to a sacred tree at a Shinto shrine near Tokyo.
Police in Matsudo of Chiba Prefecture suspect Mitsunobu Hino of committing the crimes of property damage and trespassing. The doll features a picture of Putin's face and came with a note in its breast wishing death to the Russian leader.
Hino is accused of trespassing on the grounds of Matsudo's Mikazuki Shrine at around 2:10 p.m. on May 19th and making holes in a shinboku, or sacred tree, by nailing the straw doll to it.
So police have confirmed similar Putin-themed straw dolls at more than 10 shrines in the eastern Japan city of Matsudo since May, and said there is a strong chance the perpetrator is the same, due to resemblances in the doll's sizes and the handwriting on the accompanying notes. Holy shit, they've got clues! The clues, Aaron, the clues!
Security camera footage from the shrine's grounds captured a man who appears to be Hino putting an item that looks like a straw doll into his bag and going up the stairs. 2 4-centimeter deep holes have been left in the sacred tree.
The shrine's history stretches back over 800 years. Nobuo Shibuya, an 81-year-old lay representative of the shrine, said, quote, "It's unthinkable that someone would nail down something like this in a place where people come to pray for good health."
It is pretty wild. When I first heard the story, I didn't think it was going to be an anti-Putin thing, but I guess the way he kind of did it was very anti-Russia, anti-Putin.
Yeah, most definitely. He literally was kind of praying for the death of Putin, which, of course, given the atrocities going on in Ukraine right now, is something that a lot of Japanese people are thinking and feeling right now. But the way to express that emotion is not by committing damage to sacred trees.
For sure, for sure.
Not a good idea. 0 out of 10. Do not recommend.
All right, and up next on Japanese Politics Wow, we're going to be talking about how the Japan ruling party vows to boost nation's defense in election pledges.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Tokyo Wave.
Japanese Politics Wow.
So the Liberal Democratic Party, Japan's ruling party, pledged on June 16th, ahead of this summer's House of Councilors election, that it will fundamentally reinforce the country's defense capability and increase relevant spending in the next 5 years, as Russia's war against Ukraine has raised calls within Japan for a more robust posture.
The Liberal Democratic Party has in mind a target of roughly doubling the country's defense spending to 2% or more of gross domestic product, in line with the North Atlantic Treaty Organization.
Or NATO. I've actually never heard it called North Atlantic Treaty Organization. What's that?
I think I read that when I was in middle school, learning about NATO.
North Atlantic Treaty Organization? Is that like a secret society? How do you join? You gotta be a democracy, son. So the LDP's ambitious goal is part of a package of pledges that was announced on June 16th for the July 10th upper house election. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, who is of course also president of the Liberal Democratic Party, is seeking to gauge voter confidence in his roughly 9 months of leadership amid the pandemic, the Russian invasion of its neighbor, and accelerating inflation.
For years, Japan has been committed to an exclusively defense-oriented policy under the pacifist constitution, and the country's defense spending has been limited to around 1% of GDP, or over 5 trillion yen, that's about $37 billion, in the fiscal 2022 budget.
I have a funny anecdote about this. So I was recently at a political fundraiser where former Prime Minister Abe was speaking, and he was talking about a conversation he actually had with former President Donald Trump. Donald Trump was saying, why don't you Japanese people pay more for defending your country? You expect us to take care of everything. You should be paying your fair share. And Abe retorted, well, it was, of course, your General MacArthur who wrote the Constitution that kind of makes it impossible for us to have a proper army, so my hands are tied, bro.
Yeah. I don't think Trump knew that part of history, so.
Yeah, he probably forgot it immediately afterwards, too.
Japan doesn't have an army? Yeah.
Who are all those guys in uniform, though? They're called self-defense forces.
You see, Mr. Trump, there was this thing that happened after World War II. Too much details, Murray.
I would hate to be the person in charge of that briefing.
Yeah. He made everyone do huge, insanely complex briefings in one page.
That's actually probably a good idea.
But so Obama actually started this issues with Iraq, Iran. He would make I don't know what you call them, briefs, presidential briefs. Obama made it 6 pages, and previously it could be as long as it wanted to. And then Trump came in and he's 1 page. So it's
it's gotta really pop.
Yeah.
So with this increased budget, the LDP aims to allow Japan to acquire the capability to, quote, counter-strike enemies, which sounds like my favorite video game, which of course is an issue that has gained attention in the face of repeated missile launches by North Korea. However, it remains controversial because of Japan's pacifist constitution. The LDP, however, maintained its long-held goal of revising the constitution, quote, at an early date.
Yeah.
I've been saying that for a while, though.
For sure. And I think the ability to counter-strike enemies is controversial for any country, because that probably means you're going to war.
Terrorists win. There's a video game reference for you.
Sanae Takaichi, the LDP's policy chief, told a press briefing, "There is no economy or anything else unless we can defend our territory or sovereignty."
Which is also something that Abe said in his speech. I have a feeling that they're like, what do you call it, buddies.
Oh, yeah. This whole story has kind of Abe written all over it,
Oh, yeah. Well, and I mean, Sanae Takaichi, who is a likely future candidate for Japan's first female prime minister, is widely known to be sort of almost, you could call her like an Abe fangirl of sorts. she has been following Abe since his early days and is really in tune with him on a policy level. And of course, she's the LDP's policy chief now. So a lot of what she thinks, and of course, that is also influenced by former Prime Minister Abe, becomes the ruling party's official policy. Potato, potato. Defense spending is a controversial topic, but the size of defense spending basically shows how strong a nation's will is to defend itself and sends a strong message to other countries, which is something that Takaichi also said, at a time when Japan's security environment is becoming severe in the face of an assertive China and a nuclear-armed North Korea and Russia. We're surrounded!
Yeah.
Literally.
It's pretty wild. People forget that, north of Hokkaido is Russia, right? And we are right next to North Korea. So Kishida said on June 15th, the upcoming election will provide voters an opportunity to decide how Japan will tackle, quote, history-making challenges.
However, at the same time, higher prices of everyday goods such as food and energy, which Kishida has attributed to the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, is a key issue for the LDP and other parties leading into the upper house election, as it directly affects the lives of everyday voters.
The LDP seeks to take, quote, powerful steps to alleviate the pain from inflation and retain subsidies for oil wholesalers to lower retail gasoline prices.
That hasn't really worked, though, because the gas prices are too damn high.
Yes, they are.
On the supply side, the LDP aims to make maximum use of nuclear power, which is a strong position in sort of defiance of previous softer positions, along with other forms of renewable energy, in line with its push to restart nuclear power plants, which were taken offline following the 2011 Fukushima disaster, on condition that these plants pass strict safety standards.
The severity of the global security environment prompted the conservative LDP to place foreign policy and defense first on its priority list, before measures to cope with accelerating inflation.
The LDP has a specific target for defense spending, but its coalition partner Komeito and the major opposition Constitutional Democratic Party of Japan did not include it in their campaign pledges, being of the view that substance, not sides, should come first. Are we going to start talking about hands?
He's got small hands. The LDP will continue to seek a revision to the Constitution for the first time since it was promulgated in 1946, saying that it will, quote, update the supreme law drafted under the U.S.-led Allied occupation of Japan after World War II.
Policy Chief Takaichi also said, quote, no judgment on the Constitution has been made by the people. They cannot make the Constitution their own until a referendum is held.
Komeito has shown a slight tilt in its election platform toward the conservative LDP, which aims to mention the self-defense forces in a revised constitution to end the debate over its constitutionality.
Komeito vows to consider adding a reference to the self-defense forces in the Constitution, which is a change from its previous stance that the party will cautiously debate the issue. Interesting to see this shift because the Komeito's main support base is homemakers and those who are more often than not vehemently opposed to war, as the Komeito's main backer, the Soka Gakkai lay Buddhist movement, is a pacifist religion.
The LDP and Komeito will aim to maintain their majority of the upper house's 248 seats, of which about half are being contested in the race. Campaigning is set to begin on June 22nd.
For any constitutional revision to be initiated, approval by a 2/3 majority in both houses is required. So, while it looks like the LDP is set to keep its majority, if it really wants to revise the Constitution, it needs a supermajority.
So things are looking pretty solid for the ruling Liberal Democratic Party right now. NHK's latest political survey, updated June 13th, showed that 59% support the Kishida cabinet, while only 23% said they disapprove.
The percentage of those who answered support was the highest since the Kishida cabinet was formed last October.
Those are pretty high numbers. Compared with last month, the number of respondents who said they support Kishida's cabinet increased by 4 points from the last survey to 59%, while those who said they do not support the cabinet remained unchanged at 23%.
When asked to name the 6 policy issues that are the most important to them when choosing whom to vote for, 42% said economic measures, while 17% said diplomacy and security, 15% said social security, and 7% said coronavirus measures. Wow, coronavirus measures really took a drop in popularity there.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Everyone's...
It's the economy, stupid!
Yeah, absolutely.
Who said that?
I'm sure a lot of people have said that. When asked about the government's plan to allow more foreign tourists to visit Japan, 47% said it was appropriate, 23% said it should be more relaxed, and 20% said it should not have been relaxed.
I think this is surprising because I think a lot of us foreign residents in Japan still felt a certain sense that people weren't really that enthusiastic about tourists coming back into Japan and kind of saw more tourists as bringing more COVID problems. But these numbers, and NHK's survey is known as the best, most reliable survey, cannot lie.
I'm kind of surprised, not surprised. I might have expected the 47 to be more for those who, want foreigners to come back sooner. But I don't think a lot of people understand how much of a driver it is having the ability for foreigners to come in and out of the country to boost the economy. So
might help with that cheap yen.
Exactly.
If everybody buys it because they have to buy it to spend it. So NHK's survey also touched on household spending power, which is a really sensitive issue right now here in Japan. The prices of food, daily necessities, and utility bills have recently risen as Japan experiences unprecedented inflation amidst the weak yen and rising raw material costs. When asked about the extent to which price inflation has affected their household budgets, 26% said it has affected them, quote, greatly, 50% said it has affected them to some extent, 14% said it has not affected them that much, and 3% said it has not affected them at all. So it's not the 1%, it's the 3%.
Yeah, looking at these numbers, Parker, I really think within the next couple of weeks, Kuroda and the Bank of Japan are going to come out and make some changes to the interest rate. I don't think they can keep it low or at a negative for this much longer.
Well, all the analysts have already said if the yen hits 140, then the BOJ's sort of alarm buzzer is going to go off and they're going to slide down the pole like at a fire station and press the button to make the yen go high,
Yeah. No, I definitely
I had way too much fun visualizing that.
I definitely think it'll be the case. So the most obvious sign that this summer's upper house election will likely be a slam dunk for the LDP came in the survey on preferred political party. 40% said they support the LDP, while only 5.9% said they support the Constitutional Democratic Party of Japan, and 2.9% said they support Komeito, the LDP's junior coalition partner. However, the LDP cannot simply rest on its laurels for this election, because 33% said they support no political party in particular.
And of course, that equals the swing vote here in Japan. So this is going to be an interesting election. In Japan, elections continue to become more digitized, and we see more politicians getting on social media, which has really acted as more of a balancer between LDP candidates and non-LDP candidates, where traditionally everybody did the same kind of traditional electioneering stuff, like going around in the car and putting up the posters and making the speeches at the supermarket. And it was all, basically the same sort of cookie cutter stuff.
Right.
And the more money you have, the more of that stuff you can do. And guess which political party has the most money, Aaron?
The LDP?
Yeah! And so obviously they won consistently. But with social media, it really sort of equalizes these candidates, and it makes winning races a lot harder and also a lot harder to predict for pundits.
Makes sense. I mean, I think we've seen a lot of that in the US as well. Twitter following, the way that you tweet, which I don't think Biden is doing too good of a job right now.
Yeah, maybe he needs Elon Musk to be his new chief Twitter czar.
I don't know. Both of them get a lot of flack on Twitter. Like the top comments are always just like, maybe that's just the nature of the beast, though. People just really pissed off.
I just wish they'd let Trump get back on Twitter because it would be hilarious.
It would be hilarious, but it would probably cause a lot of serious social issues.
I wonder, because, everyone's talking about Elon Musk, of course, buying Twitter. And if he buys Twitter, he's, kind of promised to make it a platform for everybody. And that could be interpreted as letting Trump back on.
Yeah. So, as you're talking about this, I had thought he had already bought Twitter, but no. Elon Musk joined an all hands meeting on Twitter yesterday, nearly 2 months after the Tesla CEO agreed to purchase the social media platform for approximately $44 billion. So I guess it's still under consideration and being negotiated.
He's trying to count the billions.
Exactly.
1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 billion Mississippis.
We'll see what happens with that. I see Elon Musk buying Twitter is really a power grab because, he's already invested in so many other industries, and a lot of his companies don't need advertising. He's very, very popular. I think him doing the Twitter thing might be overkill. I'm a little worried he's going to dig himself a really, really deep hole.
Yeah, a lot of people have kind of come out publicly. What was it, like the former CEO of Reddit saying, Elon, don't do it. You don't know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like the B movie where the scientist says, don't do that. It will kill everybody.
He's already the richest man in the world. He's extraordinarily popular on Twitter. I mean, he's as popular as Trump was. Why buy the platform? You know
why?
Why?
Because he can.
Yeah, he can.
That's how most rich people make their decisions.
Yeah.
I've done the research.
Yeah. Well, exciting to see what's going to happen with the elections here in Japan as well. Hopefully, whoever wins does something to curb this weak yen, because I don't know how much more I can stand of this crap.
Yeah, no kidding. And I really wonder how the election is going to impact the LDP. I do think they'll be able to maintain their majority, but whether they'll be able to bump it up to a supermajority is a big question. And I think if people's pockets are being deeply affected by inflation, it's going to be hard for them to support the establishment in an election.
Well said. Absolutely. Hey, listeners, that's right. You listener right there.
Who do you think should be our next guest on Tokyo Wave? Let us know. Drop us a line at wave@tokyowave.jp.
We hope you enjoyed Tokyo Wave.
If you haven't already, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube.
Join us again next week on Tokyo Wave.